welcome everybody, and we'll get started. Thank you very much. I'm Dan Leonard from We Work for Health. A little bit more about We Work for Health in a moment, but we have a great panel with a great guest honoree here today. So we want to get started and have a conversation around intellectual property and innovation and the importance of North Carolina in our country up to date and going forward. So each person on the panel is going to make some remarks, but before we get to that, I'll just quickly go down the line. Obviously, Congresswoman Ross is here, and she's going to make some comments on the far end. We're bookending the panel here today, but our partner in this effort is Frank Cullen from C4IP, the Council for Innovation Promotion, and we've really enjoyed working with you and the team, Frank. So, looking forward to that. You're going to hear from Jenny Klein, Operations and Program Management at Avidya Therapeutics. Jason Adair, in the middle there, is the Chief Business Officer of Liquidia. Laura Shoppe, who's the owner of Fuentech and a member of the Bayh-Dole Coalition. And Carrie Rongich, Director of Raleigh-Durham Electrical, JATC. So we have voices from the community, and we're really looking forward to getting into this. So I'll just get us going and with some brief remarks, Congresswoman, and then we'll jump right in. But It's great to be here in Raleigh in the North Hills Innovation District, which is, as we would say, a fitting location for a meeting on innovation because it was built on innovation, not just this building, but this entire region in the Triangle. And so it's just great to be here. I'm as I said, Dan Leonard, the Executive Director of We Work for Health. We Work for Health is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to innovation and American innovation. And so all of the activities that we do are based around building up innovation in this country from a policy perspective, advocacy, and intellectual property, and a protection of intellectual property is at the core of any innovation. So our conversation today will explore how IP protections drive innovation, support good-paying jobs, and benefit patients. So that's the core, triumvirate right there of why we do what we do. And we're particularly honored to have you here with us today, Congresswoman. Your leadership and perspective will be invaluable to this conversation and to the work that you do and the Congress does going forward, and how best to support North Carolina's continued success in life sciences. Congresswoman Ross is a true champion for her district, her state, and indeed the entire nation in the research-based life science industry as well. It's such a big part of what you do here in North Carolina. There's no better example than North Carolina of the American powerhouse of innovation that this state has become. The state's life science industry supports 226,000 jobs, generates over $80 billion in economic output, and it's a place where breakthrough ideas can flourish and novel treatments for diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's and genetic conditions are born. But this success did not happen by accident. It's built on a foundation of robust intellectual property protections that give researchers, entrepreneurs, and investors the confidence to pursue long-term, high-risk projects. The current IP system is anchored by landmark legislation like the Bayh-Dole Act, what we'll hear more about, and the Hatch-Waxman Act, and others, which have created a carefully calibrated balance that's working. It rewards innovation while ensuring that generic competition enters the market when patents expire and prices go down, delivering both breakthrough treatments and affordability to patients across the country. And today it's that balanced system. It's been working for us for a long time, but it faces new challenges. While reducing prescription drug prices for patients must be a national priority, we need to avoid policy proposals that risk undermining the very foundation that makes American medical innovation possible. So I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists on this topic. And right now I'd like to turn to our guest of honor, Congresswoman Deborah Ross.
Well, good morning, everyone. I know a few of you, but I'm thrilled to meet so many more of you. I'm Congresswoman Deborah Ross. I represent most of Wake County in Congress. I serve on probably the two most important committees for innovation. The Science, Space, and Technology Committee, which I've served on ever since I joined Congress 5 years ago, And I also serve on the Judiciary Subcommittee on Courts and Intellectual Property. And so I have done quite a lot of work on intellectual property issues here with the life sciences community, but also, with the movie makers and the recording artists. I want to thank We Work for Health and the Council on Innovation Promotion for bringing us together for this very important conversation at this crucial moment. I'm proud to represent the Research Triangle area. We are, as you've described, one of the most dynamic science ecosystems in the world. Just yesterday, I was with the Swiss doing the groundbreaking for Genentech. A little bit more than a week ago, I was in Denmark with the life sciences industry there. Everybody is coming to North Carolina, and that is because we have the best workforce and we have a real culture of innovation. And every day, discoveries from our universities and labs move quickly into startups, clinical trials, and products that save lives and strengthen our economy. But right now, our innovation system is being tested. And I am going to be very frank, it is being tested by this administration. It was also tested a bit by the last administration. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has threatened to use march-in rights, which are rarely used, against Harvard University's patent portfolio. This would be devastating to our universities, which are really the epicenter of innovation. If a government were to seize patents from a research institution for the first time ever, it would set a dangerous precedent for our universities, startups, and private partners. We are not China. We are the United States of America, where intellectual property and patent protection is in our Constitution even before the Bill of Rights. Over 40 years ago, the Bayh-Dole Act was passed to ensure taxpayer-supported research reaches the public, not to let the government revoke patent rights for political reasons. In Congress, I'm working to keep our system both strong and accessible. Along with Senator Tillis, we passed a new law called the Unleashing American Innovators Act, which expands access to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and supports first-time applicants and reaches underserved areas, setting up a new Southeastern Patent Office. I'm also pushing, again with Senator Tillis, very bipartisan, for the passage of the Prevail Act, a bipartisan effort to reform the Patent and Trial Appeal Board, to reduce duplicative challenges and improve transparency. The bottom line is that patents matter, they drive innovation, and the rules must stay strong and predictable if we want the next life-saving therapy to be developed here in North Carolina and the United States. I'm grateful for the work that you do every day to advance this mission, and I'm very glad to be part of today's discussion. So let's get started.
Great. Thank you so much. Great opening remarks. I'd like to turn to our partner in this effort, and that's Frank Cullen, to say some words as well, and then we'll get us kicked off.
Well, thank you, Dan. It's a real pleasure to be here. My first time to Raleigh, and it's beautiful, so enjoy being in North Carolina. Thank you, Congresswoman, for those great comments, and thank you for your leadership. It's rare that we see members of Congress who not only are willing to step out on these important issues and take a leadership role such as you have, but also to have the understanding of the intricate nature and the relationship between these policies and success, bringing new products to market, creating local jobs, really flourishing our innovation economy. So your leadership is tremendously important. As was said, I'm Frank Cullen with the Council for Innovation Promotion. We're a bipartisan group dedicated to promoting the very policies that Congresswoman Ross champions in Congress. It's no accident that America leads in innovation. As the Congresswoman said, Our founders were brilliant in terms of placing intellectual property into the Constitution and allowing individuals to bring their ideas, their creations, their creative works to market in a way that had never been done before in history. North Carolina is a tremendous example of this. Our leadership has two former heads of the Patent and Trademark Office, so they understand these issues. They understand they are nonpartisan. We also have former Commerce Secretary Gary Locke, former Judiciary Committee Chairman Lamar Smith, and two former federal retired judges. So we have a real brain trust that works exclusively on these issues with great leaders like Congresswoman Ross. I just want to thank We Work for Health for allowing us to partner today to have this very important discussion. The work that they do to advance these policies and the understanding of the important role intellectual property and other policies play, driving local job creation and innovation nationally, is critical to helping the Congresswoman succeed at her work. Today we're going to hear from people who are on the ground, who actually understand these issues and how they actually relate to putting people to work, creating new economic opportunity in underserved communities, and strengthening our national economy. So I want to thank the other members of our panel. I look forward to today's discussion, and we look forward to continuing to work with the Congresswoman to make sure some of the very threats that she mentioned today are being pushed back against, and the leadership on legislation such as the PREVAIL Act are supported by folks both in Washington and here locally. So thank you all for being here. I'm looking forward to a great discussion, and thank you again, Congresswoman Ross.
And thank you, Frank. Just a few more comments, and then we'll get right into the panel. But Congresswoman Ross mentioned march-in rights, and this is a grave threat. It would be a wholly unprecedented action for any administration to do that, to charge in and take patents. So that's one issue that we're definitely need to be aware of and are cognizant of and pushing back on. There are other policies that would be challenging to the innovative ecosystem in this country. Most Favored Nation is another one that the president executed an executive order on a few months ago, and there's a lot of chatter around regulating our prices in this country based on prices in other foreign countries, OECD countries, and that would be an idea. That would be an example of bad policy that would set us in the wrong direction on innovation. But the evidence is clear: when countries implement aggressive price controls or weaken IP protection, innovation suffers. It's that simple, and we can't allow America to follow that path. Doing so would undermine our competitive advantage that is created where we're sitting now in North Carolina, et cetera. And the stakes couldn't be higher. We're fighting hard and fast to keep countries like China from surpassing us, keeping them off our heels. The Chinese are executing a long-term strategy to dominate the industry, and they're committed to it. And just this past weekend, the Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, was in the Wall Street Journal and was quoted as saying, "America innovates, China imitates, Europe regulates." And I don't think she's the first one to have said that, but it stuck out, and it's a good example of the innovation that happens here and then helps patients all around the world. China has, for the most part, been an imitator, a follow-on, but they're investing in their system, their life science industry, very significantly. And Europe, which used to lead the world in life science innovation, really lost it about 40 to 50 years ago because of overregulation, we could say, on a lot of it on very draconian price controls that they have put into place. So that was a nice capture, I think, of the flavor of what we're fighting against. Just again, a couple of statistics for North Carolina. We're really at the forefront of innovation here because of IP protections that are in the Bayh-Dole Act and others. The university systems that are around us in the Triangle. And the state's life science industry represents a significant economic driver, generating $51.6 billion in direct corporate revenue. This is out of an ITIF report that we were part of as well, that we launched about a month ago, and the Congresswoman came and spoke at the event in the Senate on that event as well, on that topic. And it supports over 213,000 jobs with an employment multiplier of 2.84, which means every life science job, direct job, supports another 1.84 jobs in the state. Life science startups and U.S. universities tend to stay local. This is another reason I think the Triangle is doing so well. Of 498 university licensed startup life science companies that were studied in this ITF report, 68% of those companies stayed within 60 miles of the founding university. So if an innovation comes out of Duke or Chapel Hill or NC State, the odds are they're going to stay right within 60 miles of their home base, and that's terrific news for the Triangle. So anyway, these are important data points. They're important conversations to have. So let's have it. So right now, I'd like to start with our panel, and then Congresswoman, if you have any questions along the way, please dig in. So first up is Laura Shoppe.
Thank you. And Congresswoman, nice to meet you directly. So my name is Laura Shoppe. I'm the founder and president of Fuentech, which was started back in 2001 as a 100% virtual company, even before the concept existed. We were grown out of my experience first starting over 30 years ago when I worked in the submarine and surface ship combat system for GE Aerospace, and we met with GE Medical. And they said, well, you guys are looking at things that might be applicable to X-rays. And we said, sure. We are trying to detect anomalies in a diverse environment. And so we started the discussion of figuring out how do we use the algorithms that we were developing for submarine combat in X-rays. And we found some synergies. And we said, okay, this is going to take millions of dollars and years of development to transition it. And they laughed at us and said, that's not how it works. We do things in months and we do things for a whole lot less money. So my first foray into this concept of commercialization, which I didn't even know how to spell at the time, was a disaster. But it created some interest. And so I left Syracuse, moved down here, and started work in the commercialization sector. It is a long and winding road. This is very difficult. Innovation takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of people. And the pipeline needs to stay full. If we do not continue to fill that pipeline today, we're going to feel the effects soon. Not just 10 years or 20 years from now, but we're going to feel it as people leave this country and go do their research, do their development somewhere else. And they're, as Dan just mentioned, they're not coming back. They will stay where they are doing their development, and that will be a huge loss to this country. So we heard some statistics about the development of innovations coming out of universities. Since the Bayh-Dole Act initiated in the 1980s, there has been over I have to get my glasses probably, over $1 trillion in US GDP, over 200 new drugs and vaccines have been developed, and here locally, in just last year alone, we launched over 250 new agreements and 27 startup companies. So that's a significant impact of what innovation can do locally, but as well as for the rest of this country. So Fuentech works with universities and government labs, looking at innovations as they are developed. So as invention disclosures are submitted, we analyze them to determine which ones have the highest potential for commercialization, and then we help work with lawyers to create those patents and move forward. Then we will market that technology and help license the technology and broker those deals, and then we celebrate afterwards, making sure that everybody gets the credit that they deserve. So again, that pipeline is very important. This is a long and difficult process, and we cannot risk losing the input to that activity. And I'm sure through the discussions you'll hear more about why that's so important. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Next, we're going to go to Carrie to hear about the kind of the importance to the union community of the life science sector in North Carolina.
Hi, my name is Carrie Rongich. I'm the training director at the Raleigh-Durham Electrical JATC. We are a 4-year apprenticeship program, and we are a partnership supported by the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and NECA, which is the National Electrical Contractors Association. And thank you all for allowing us to be here today and represent the connection between the pharmaceutical industry and development in this area and electrical construction workers and all construction workers in the area. Our apprenticeship program specifically has been able to grow in recent years due to the projects going on in this area. It's also attracted a different type of applicant and a different type of interest in the construction trades. Our electrical workers are not just digging ditches, they are doing complex work within these facilities. So appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share that perspective.
Great, and a very important perspective. Thank you for being here, Carrie. Next is Jennifer from Odelia Therapeutics.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Jennifer Klein. I am a scientist currently employed at Odelia Therapeutics as their Director of Operations and Program Management. But more importantly, I am a rare disease patient advocate that's been battling a rare lysosomal storage disease my entire life, diagnosed at 9. So these issues and these policies affect myself personally. They also affect many of my friends and my fellow rare disease community partners. This is a very important space for us. At Odelia, we're actually a nonprofit biotech. So we work in the space of trying to accelerate therapeutic development for rare diseases where there might not be a commercial option. We do that by having our own internal pipeline. We were actually seeded with an exclusive license for our AAV capsid. And so that's incredibly important because that allows us to potentially partner our programs and get them through the clinic and clinical trials. And then we also work directly with patient advocacy groups, helping them accelerate their own therapeutic developments, whatever that may look like. We work with groups of all shapes and sizes. And for the past 15 years, I've seen many rare disease patient advocacy groups becoming increasingly savvy in this area, and they've been interested in keeping actually their IP protections within their group. And I've also seen parents form their own companies because they're scared that if assets are dropped, their therapeutic might not end up going anywhere. And might just be shelved and it might just stay sitting there, and all the advancement and preclinical work that has been done will just stay stagnant for years. So this is becoming a really important space for patient groups and the rare disease community who want to be more involved. They're becoming citizen scientists and they're learning everything that they can about this space. And to be quite honest, they're the ones who are doing a lot of the fundraising and funding much of the preclinical research. And if they're not doing it themselves, they're finding an academic partner at a university who is writing grants to help them. So IP protection, it's very important in the industry and biotech space, but it's becoming increasingly important for our patient groups as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And last but not least on the panel, Jason Adair.
Hi, Congresswoman Ross. Very excited to be here and to meet you. We've worked with your office in the past. It's an exciting time for Liquidia. We launched our first product this summer. The technology that we use started at UNC Chapel Hill. So with many of the panelists here, there's different topics that all kind of come to Liquidia. Spun out in 2004, UNC Chapel Hill, tried to figure out what it was going to be, was in material science, pivoted to life science, and then for the last 10, 15 years, it's been really figuring out how do we scale this manufacturing technology that allows us to build precise formulations so that everything is uniformly the same at the nanoscale and microscale. But at the same time, find unmet needs. So what we focus on are rare cardiopulmonary diseases. So the product that we launched this summer actually improves the tolerability, potentially the efficacy, and definitely the convenience of a drug that had already been approved in the past. So our company definitely relies on the patent system, but also relies on the innovation that comes out of the academic institutions, and we're not going to stop. We're going to keep building because we have a passionate group of scientists and clinicians. We hired our 200th employee this summer, and we just opened a lease on a new manufacturing space right on the edge of your district. So the bulk of our employees work in your district.
Thank you so much. Jason, thank you to all the panelists. And now let's have a little dialogue. Let's have a Q&A, and I'll just kick us off with you, Congresswoman. Obviously, a lot going on in Washington, a lot as it's related to IP and innovation, and you referenced some in your opening remarks. But from your perspective, what makes this state such an attractive destination? I'm giving you a real softball here at the top. What makes North Carolina such an attractive destination?
I'm going to raise another issue
Sure, please.
within the reasons. So, we all know, and we're so proud of the Research Triangle Park, the vision of Luther Hodges and Terry Sanford to have really, the triangle is, Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill, and the main institutions that are there, but the triangle is also business, government, and education. And how can we work together, which is exactly what Bayh-Dole is about. How can we all advance innovation and the scientific enterprise? And there, at that time, the concern was that we were educating all these people and they were going somewhere else. They were going to Syracuse. They were going to California. And we wanted to keep them and their innovation here, invest in that innovation. And so that is one of the reasons why. But I'm here to argue that the other reason why had to do with Governor for Life, Jim Hunt, governor for 16 years. He actively recruited immigrants, high-skilled immigrants, to come to our research institutions, actively recruited businesses from all over the world in a way that no other governor has done it, and said that we are open for business. We have a Japan Center at NC State University. We have mosques in the Triangle and in Charlotte. We have one of the largest populations of Indian students, 7,000 Indian students from India who come to this country and to this area. And they stay, they have visas that go on for ages, they educate their children here, and they have a lot of these patents. And so I think it is the combination of the initial idea of having the Research Triangle, getting the investment in it, but then Governor Hunt understanding that the United States is not the only place that has smart people. What we have is an innovation economy and a constitution that rewards people in the way they don't get rewarded in other places around the world. And so he and our Department of Commerce created a welcoming environment. And that is why Morrisville is almost half foreign-born. Cary, more than 30%. These are the Wake County communities that are at the heart of the Research Triangle. And I will argue to you that this administration's immigration policy, immoral, cruel, all the things we talk about, it is killing innovation, absolutely killing innovation. Because if those students can't come here, then they're not going to stay here, they're not going to create here, and we are going to fall behind. So I know that was strong, but it needs to be said.
Well said. It was, the timing is important that we're here having this conversation today because of everything going on in Washington and on the national scale. Let's keep hearing from some of the other panelists. Jennifer, I wanted to turn to you to see, you bring, as you mentioned, both industry expertise, but also the patient perspective. Can you share how strong IP protections translate into tangible benefits for patients from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. For the companies that do work in the rare and ultra rare disease space, it's very important for them to have those IP protections because they can have that return on investment, even though it might be small compared to some of their other products. The idea is that they can put that investment into their technology and that will come back and reap some benefit for the company. And we, support companies that absolutely want to make that huge investment into the rare disease space. It's a lot of capital up front, especially with these new genetic technologies. So it's something that we need to keep in mind, and we need to protect our companies that do want to invest in this space because it is a lot of capital.
Yeah. Jason, you talked about Liquidia, and you've had some milestones lately, so congratulations. You're also an interesting case study. You're a company that leveraged the local university technology that you referenced to bring innovative treatments to the market. Can you go into a little more detail on that journey? Because it's been it's been a while, but to that data point I used earlier, you stayed close to home.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting how long it takes, right? We know that it takes a long time to develop a medicine, right? The act of the clinical trials. It takes a longer time to polish that science, to get it to the point where you can meet the FDA criteria for putting it into a human being, right? So when you think about that, our company was founded in 2004, right? So, and then it took probably 5-6 years to figure out what to do with it, right? To scale it. So those initial patents, we're still paying on those patents now with a royalty back to UNC. Now, that was a long time ago. We've had to continue to innovate, and it takes the local economic kind of community to refine those patents. We can't just rely on what the patents are that come out of universities. You have to have seasoned entrepreneurs in the area, right? You have to have the scientists in the area. And that's what we were able to do, is to combine all of that. We worked for about 10 years with other companies, right? So we worked with many large pharmaceutical companies in the US and outside the US to refine and work on their problems. But to create real value, we said, let's bet on ourselves. We'll build our own products for patients in the United States. And that's what we've done. So over that 20 years, we can say as of August 8th, there are more than 500 patients now with a drug that we made here in the United States, or in North Carolina, from technology at Chapel Hill, and we're not going to stop. We're really excited.
That's great. And I would just say, Congresswoman, if you have any questions along the way, just
Well,
jump-
I'm learning from everybody, so I'm going to try to stay as quiet as I can.
Fair enough. And Jason, you just kind of touched on the importance of tech transfer. So Laura, I'm going to turn to you because this is your area as well. But it's really it's that connectivity between, the university systems, grant money, NIH. We haven't really talked much about NIH, Congressman. I know that's important to you. And then the commercialization process that Jason outlined with private industry. So tell us a little bit more about, your focus on tech transfer and commercialization.
Sure, and I'm going to go back to that pipeline example because you brought up the NIH funding. The pipeline has many pieces that go into it, and very little comes out the back end. And it's, again, that long and winding road, and it takes a long time, as Jason mentioned. There's a lot of failures along that road. And as Jennifer mentioned, they need a return on the investment that they make. And so if we do not have the NIH funding coming in, then we're not going to have the opportunities to explore which of these drugs, vaccines, capabilities are actually going to make it to the next level. And that could take 20 years. That could take a lot of different people coming in. That's a lot of investment. And so the concerns about what the price of drugs are laudable, and they're logical, and we should be concerned about that. But I think we need to be real about industry is not going to invest. They're not going to take the risk of licensing a technology, of investing in the development of the technology, of polishing it, if they don't have the opportunity to get that return on their investment. I heard a story on the way here about the baseball stadium that they're talking about potentially building. It could be $1 billion, but they said it'll be $100 million in revenue every year. Well, if you look at just that math, that's 10 years before you get the return. That's not true. There's the taxes that are coming in, and there's the job multiplier issues. It's very complex. And the same thing happens with commercialization. We analyze hundreds of technologies, thousands of technologies coming in, depending on the office and the university. Some have many hundreds per year, some have 10. Very few of those will make it through our review process. Less will make it through the marketing process and the licensing process, and even less will make it to development. It's less than 10%, and at most institutions it's less than 5% of the innovations that happen. And that is a smaller percentage of the research dollars that come in. And so the attack on the NIH funding, on all of the funding. If we see a drop in a third of that funding, which is part of what's being projected now, think about how that relates to the innovation that comes out in the back end. It all goes down. And again, the innovators are going to leave. If there's no research funding today, they're not going to stay at these universities. They're going to go overseas. And I already know several of them that are being courted in China, in Europe, in India, where we have educated the world. And now they're going back because their environments are better at home than they are here. And that was never the case.
Can I add
Please,
something to that?
please, absolutely.
So I said I wasn't going to talk, but I just want to share. 2 years ago, I was in India and went to Hyderabad. If anybody, has anybody here ever been to Hyderabad? It's unbelievable. It's a city that just basically was built in what, the last 10 years. They have the largest innovation hub in the world. And then you can walk from the place where you do your experiments and come up with your ideas over to a place that has a fab for anything you want to build with state of the art. And I talk to the students, and they are less interested in coming here because now they have everything in Hyderabad. They also, it's cheaper to live in India, you can have a driver, you can have, so they basically said all of these things. Why would they come here? And I want India to grow and prosper. I mean, they really need that for their huge population. But they're making that assessment. Where am I going to do the work? And we assume that everybody else is standing still, but everybody else is running twice as fast as we are.
Just another anecdote, when the NIH cuts became big news this spring, the very next day, the government of the Netherlands sent out a big notice for grants for American scientists to come to the Netherlands. So, and they're not the only ones. Other countries are doing the same, but the recruitment battle is on as well. Before we get to Frank, I want Carrie to just weigh in on some of these things and the importance of the life science sector to all of the work that's done here in the Triangle for your members.
Yeah, well, while construction workers might not be the first thing that comes to mind, the pharmaceutical industry has become one of the biggest drivers of skilled construction work in the United States. A recent study by PILMA, which is the Pharmaceutical Industry Labor Management Association, showed that this sector generated over 65 million union labor hours across 18 states in the last 5 years. And what that translates to is $2.6 billion in wages for our electricians, iron workers, pipe fitters, and other skilled tradespeople. And these aren't just jobs to them, these are careers. They support middle-class families, they have competitive wages, comprehensive health insurance, and pension benefits. The numbers really tell the true story, I think. Over the past few years, the industry infrastructure investment has skyrocketed. It went from $6.7 billion in 2019 to $14.4 billion in 2024. And again, that type of growth really creates opportunities for our members. Like I mentioned too, building these complex pharmaceutical facilities is not your average construction job. They're sophisticated research and development facilities. Our electricians wire sophisticated laboratory equipment. Our pipe fitters install complex clean room systems. And again, what's unique about the union jobs is they offer a direct pathway to the middle class without college debt or taxpayer-funded training programs. Our apprentices and our apprenticeship programs create skilled workers who earn while they learn. So the scale of it's really massive. We're looking at $86.5 billion in active construction projects in the pharmaceutical industry over the last 5 years. And that kind of investment really supports local communities and regional economies. So while it may not seem obvious when you think of intellectual property protections or NIH grants affecting the construction sector, it can make a real difference in the quality of life for our tradespeople here in the area.
Very well said. Frank, anything down the other end you want to chime in with?
Sure, thanks, Dan. And I'd love to follow on some points that were made already. Carrie very appropriately talked about the economic impact. According to the Department of Commerce, 55 million domestic jobs, 40% of our GDP, huge amount of our trade are all coming from IP-intensive industries across multiple industry sectors. So there's a huge contribution, and right now it's at risk. It's at risk because policies are being challenged in a way they never were before. There had always been a sort of a traditional assumption that intellectual property was foundational. It was bipartisan traditionally. We always see it as nonpartisan. But now, and the Congresswoman appropriately pointed this out, different administrations, including the current one, are making proposals that would be unheard of years ago. They undermine America's leadership, the role that we set for the rest of the world in terms of respecting intellectual property, maintaining not only our leadership, but our competitiveness. A huge problem when we look at countries like China or India, which are trying to overtake us in terms of innovation leadership. China plays the long game, and some people may be surprised to learn it's easier to get a patent on a medical device in China than it is in the United States, because our courts have upended and created confusion around what's patent eligible. What should be pretty simple is now complex. We also see problems within our courts in terms of the ability for people to defend their patents, injunctive relief, to also have to be dragged into multiple forums to defend their patents. So these are very complex problems that really did not exist traditionally. Maybe we could call them self-inflicted wounds, but part of it is simply because there's a lack of understanding and a lack of commitment within Congress to pay attention to these issues. We do a congressional scorecard. Proud to say the Congresswoman is one of our top scorers, and we thank her for that. It's because she not only has an appreciation of these issues, but she works hard on them to make sure the right policies are in place, not only to support what's happening here in North Carolina, but across the country and across all industry sectors. We heard about the Bayh-Dole Act, tremendously important. It wasn't just the life sciences that benefited. Companies like Google would likely not have existed, and Sergey Brin even admitted to that if it was not for the Bayh-Dole Act. Now, unfortunately, many in the high-tech sector, they have different business models. They've decided they're not quite as interested in patents unless they might be theirs, and I don't think Google's going to just give you their algorithms. But at some point in time, they decided their business model is not based on IP. So they've spent, along with others, literally hundreds of millions of dollars to change policies and to undermine the IP protections that should be available to any enterprise and any individual who's trying to bring something to market. These are very serious and consequential threats to the very innovation leadership that America has maintained for the last 200 years, and our ability, as Carrie said, to have that spread out amongst other sectors and create good-paying jobs across the board in industries that rely on IP-intensive sectors. So for us, our work is very much focused on trying to grow the appreciation amongst members of Congress for these issues, the understanding that the Congresswoman has, and to get local voices like Jennifer's, to actually engage policymakers to express the importance of intellectual property and its intersection with our innovation economy. The Congresswoman also mentioned the creative sector. Let's not overlook the contributions of the creative sector. And all of these things rely on different forms of IP. So again, thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you to our panelists for highlighting these important issues. For anyone who has the opportunity to intersect with policymakers, the more you can do to reinforce that this is an issue you care about, this is an issue that supports local jobs, and this is an issue you want them to care about, that's going to convey a certain level of importance to a member of Congress that maybe they're currently not putting on these issues today. So thank you, Congresswoman, and really appreciate the conversation.
Well, I'll wrap up with just one other observation, a book that I read lately called The Most Powerful Idea in the World by William Rosen, which traces the invention of the steam engine. And so you entered this book, you start reading and thinking this is the most important innovation in the history of the world, the steam engine, which is truly a critical innovation. But it was actually the IP system that was built at that same time to protect the innovations, protect the patents that created what we would consider the modern patent system today, because the steam engine led to the locomotive, which led to ultimately the automobile, and goes on and on and on. But it was actually the creation of the IP system around that was the most important invention in the history of the world, according to Mr. Rosen's book, and I don't doubt it. So,
Dan,
yeah.
can I make just one observation?
Please.
Talking about the IP system, China used to steal our ideas, copy them, create counterfeits, bring them back to the United States. Many times there are health impacts to consumers, health and safety risks to consumers with counterfeits. So IP also creates protections for consumers that go well beyond just driving innovation, but protect health and safety. But in addition to that, not only did China copy our products, they're now copying our IP system. They're taking a page out of our playbook. They're going to beat us at our own game. If we don't get smart and maintain a strong IP system, a strong innovation and creative economy, we're going to be playing catch up. And it's all about competitiveness. And you won't have this conversation today. It's also about national security. Economic security is national security.
We tend to use a 4-year calendar for our domestic political calendar. China uses dynasties, 100-year dynasties, so they're in the long game for sure. Any other comments, Congresswoman, before we wrap it up? Okay, thank you so much for coming. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I really appreciated the conversation. Thank you.